Guys, this theory in this video is not for the weak of heart. If you usually watch these kinds of videos and they trigger you, or they have to absolutely be factual in order to satisfy you, I recommend you to leave now. I foresee this idea to be very divisive, and it's not one of those things that I believe so strongly that I'm willing to argue the world, argue everyone in order to justify why it's a possibility. However, I do believe that it is a possibility, one that is incredibly interesting and honestly might overwhelm you emotionally. Just the thought of it. So strap yourselves in, because in large part this video is about a death in Wano Kuni that you were not expecting. Hey YouTube, JoBoy here. So, I've spent the last several days on Twitter debating and arguing the theory that I brought up just the other day about Zoro leaving the crew. But as with all ideas, you know, what it takes to convince one person of a possibility of something and somebody else, it can be very different. So in the process of arguing for it, sometimes you have to justify other things as well. So one of the big things that I found that I needed to do in order to persuade some people is I needed to compare Sanji and Usopp. And in simple terms, suggest that when Sanji left the crew in Whole Cake Island, is a little bit of both Robin and Usopp leaving the crew. Now the comparisons between Robin and Sanji I think are relatively straightforward. Most people understand that the moment in which Robin told the Straw Hats she wants to live is just absurdly similar to the moment in which Sanji told Luffy, I want to go back to the Sunny. When it happened, I think most readers got Robin impressions, but this isn't the only similarity, it's just one of the more surface level ones. If you dig deeper, you can find a lot more. Robin was chased by her enemies and essentially blackmailed to join them and leave the crew, which is almost precisely what happened with Sanji and his family. Both Robin and Sanji did what they did in part in order to protect the crew. And in general, I think felt as though their problems were not the problems of their friends. But again, guys, I think that most people see the comparisons between Sanji and Robin, but what I don't see talked about very often is the comparisons between Sanji and Usopp. Why did Sanji initially decide to leave the crew behind? And the answer for that, although people keep bringing this up as though it isn't factual, although it isn't explicitly stated, I guess, but the reason is because the threat over Zeph's life. We can see Vito whispering into his ear beforehand Sanji was not going with them, and then after this moment, he decides he must. Shortly after we see this flashback, Peckham's explains that if you are invited to Big Mom's tea party but you do not show up, then the head of somebody that you know from your past, family, friends, whoever, will be delivered to you in a box. And almost immediately upon arriving in Whole Cake Island, this threat was substantiated by the Vinsmoke, who had acquired information of Zeph from the Big Mom pirates. So initially, Sanji decided to leave the crew behind. He hadn't officially decided that he was going to leave yet. Remember, he said that he did plan on returning, but the reason that he left was because he needed to save Zeph's life. And he decided that by traveling to Whole Cake Island, he would be capable of doing this. Zeph to him could be saved. So why is this similar to Usopp? Well, Usopp, just the same as Sanji, ends up leaving the crew in order to save someone's life. In Usopp's case, he wanted to save the life of the Going Merry. Now you may say, well, the Going Merry could not be saved. Usopp was being delusional, and that may be the case, but the fact is that Usopp himself believed that he could save the Merry, just as Sanji believed that he could save Zeph. In both of these cases, a particular life was at stake, unlike in Robin's case, where it is the lives of the Straw Hat crew in general. But this isn't the most striking similarity between Usopp and Sanji. The most obvious is what Sanji ends up saying to Luffy during his fight with him in Whole Cake Island. Let me be blunt here. I've always had serious doubts that someone of your ilk could ever become the Pirate King. No Straw Hat has ever said anything like this to Luffy aside from Usopp. When Luffy told the crew that they were going to go shopping for a new ship, that the Going Merry was broken, Usopp had nothing nice to say to Luffy. Both Sanji and Usopp badly disrespected their captains, saying things that they both did not mean and did not believe. And both of these characters are the only two Straw Hats to seriously fight Luffy. with every intention of trying to harm him. And both believe that in the act of doing something, they will have achieved some amount of good. And as we talked about previously, I do expect that these parallels between Usopp to be taken just one step further. Usopp, despite not meaning what he said to Luffy, not really wanting to leave the crew, by the end of Enies lobby, when they returned back to Water 7, he had to apologize for it. They all knew that he wanted to come back and he didn't mean everything that he said, but he had to say that and not just sweep it under the rug. Sanji, as of yet, has not apologized. In my opinion, what he said to Luffy was far worse than what Usopp said to him, and yet after having said it, he has not addressed it again. At least not to say sorry for it. The best that we got is that Sanji straight up says, I can't return to your crew because I said those things. Not, I'm sorry for saying them, please forgive me, accept me. So I do think that Sanji is in store for a similar moment to Usopp. And another similarity between these two situations is, in Usopp's case, most of the Straw Hats were perfectly fine with him coming back and not apologizing. As I've said earlier, they understood that it was a mistake, he didn't mean those things, it wasn't a big deal any longer. They had already forgiven him. However, Zoro would not allow that. If Usopp were to come back, he was coming back on Zoro's terms or not at all. He wouldn't accept him. And I believe that we are seeing the very same thing play out with Sanji right now. Of course, the majority of the crew probably do not know what it is that he did in Whole Cake Island, but as far as Luffy is concerned, he understands that Sanji didn't mean what he said and has already forgiven him. And outside of telling Zoro, he has no reason to uphold Zoro's ideals. Which is to say, this is the world in which Usopp has left the crew, and Zoro is not there to tell Luffy that he will not accept his return unless he apologizes. But if Zoro does ever learn about what is happening, I think that we can all agree that he would not be happy about it, especially because Sanji is doing exactly what it is that he hates. He's sweeping it under the rug, pretending like it never happened. Even though he himself said to Luffy that he couldn't return to the crew because of what he said. He seems to know what it is that he needs to do. He knows his circumstances, yet still is ashamed. Ashamed just like Usopp, unlike Robin. And even to take this a step further, before Nami was more than forgiving of Usopp, but when it comes to what Sanji did, she told him, I will never forgive you. This goes along with the idea that what Sanji did was worse. So anyway guys, the point of everything that I am saying here is that Sanji parallels both Robin and Usopp at the same time in various ways. It is not exactly the same as either. So let's switch gears and let's talk about something else. Whole Cake Island was an arc that many people criticized. I believe some people overly criticized, but that's not to say that I don't agree with some of those criticisms. And one in particular is some of the circumstances that surrounded Sanji, which sort of kept him in Whole Cake Island and acted as stakes for the reason why he ultimately left the crew. What we are specifically talking about here is Owner Zeff. I said this earlier, but I want to repeat sort of these circumstances that surrounded this. Most likely, it was not outright stated, but we know this is the case, is that Vito whispered into Sanji's ear that if he did not go with them, then he would have Owner Zeff's head delivered to him in a box. And so this threat loomed over Sanji's head for almost the entirety of the arc. And so as Sanji is explaining to Luffy why he cannot return to the crew, his second reason is Zeff. Zeff is being held hostage. On one hand, you have the Vinsmokes themselves and Judge Vinsmoke who have specifically told Sanji that if he steps out of line, Zeff is going to die. But on the other hand, you have the Big Mom Pirates, who were actually the ones to tell the Vinsmokes about Zeff in the first place and allow them to use Zeff as a threat. And so throughout the course of Whole Cake Island, we got some resolution to this conflict, specifically with the Vinsmokes, when Judge Vinsmoke said directly that he would no longer harm Zeff. He promised that. And so for most readers at this point, the problem was solved. Sanji can breathe easy, he has nothing to worry about. The Straw Hats leave Whole Cake Island, and Zeff is no longer a worry. Except for one thing, guys. Big Mom never promised the same thing. Big Mom is not kind to those who do not attend her tea party. I wonder exactly how she would feel about those who did attend her tea party, but ruined it in every possible way. You think Zeff is safe? For what reason do you have to believe that Zeff is safe? Big Mom is willing to threaten the family of those that you care about for not showing up to her tea party. What would she do to her actual enemies? Those who have wronged her in a very significant way. I would be afraid. This would be worse. Guys, the only argument that you can have that suggests that Zeph will be alright, that Zeph is just fine, there's nothing to worry about, is because of plot convenience. Big Mom forgot about the friends and family of not only Sanji, but the rest of the Strats as well. She is so focused on hurting them that she's not going to do what it is that she normally does. She's too mad, I guess. Guys, if this is what you say that you believe, that it is of no significance because Oda will essentially ignore it, then I can't hold that against you, and honestly I probably agree with you. But that does not mean that the other side of the fence can't exist. So what am I saying? What does this mean? Well, this suggests that Oda will not use plot convenience as an excuse for Big Mom to act any different than how he has established her to, which is to say that Big Mom very easily could kill Owner Zeph when Sanji is not there to protect him, because Sanji never actually saved him. And guys, note that I am saying Owner Zeph, and I will repeat Owner Zeph, but Peckham's established that the power of the Yonko, the power of Big Mom, was her connections, her information network, being able to know things others do not know. He knew about Sanji's past with Owner Zeph and at Kamabaka Kingdom, which is incredibly niche to know. So there's a possibility that it's not only Sanji that is infected, but the entire Straw Hat crew. Big Mom will search them all out as revenge. Now guys, I want to establish something else. So I don't personally believe that it is impactful for Oda to describe much of these Strats' families and friends, or Owner Zeph specifically, whatever it ends up being, dying off screen somewhere else. That just doesn't feel very One Piece to me. So my personal interpretation of this scenario, if Oda chooses to go in this direction, will be that Big Mom will capture Owner Zeph and bring him to Wano. Then, along with the Vinsmokes and Jinbei, the Sun Pirates, and Peckhams, Big Mom will lord these individuals' lives over the Straw Hats as an act of revenge. Straw Hats, your actions have consequences. I am a Yonko. Now prepare to watch your friends die. There's one thing that just seems really ominous and interesting to me that I can't really fully explain. So the Straw Hats end up escaping Whole Cake Island, they head to Wano, and Big Mom does not immediately chase after them. Why is that? We can see here what we assume to be several days later having a casual conversation with Kaido, essentially saying that I will be coming to Wano to fetch the Strats, not that I have already left in an angry rush to enact my revenge. It's like she cooled down and is reverting back to the Yonko that initially frightened us. The cold and calculating version of Big Mom. The version of Big Mom who severed people's heads and delivered them to their recipients within a box. It just makes me wonder if Big Mom is not preparing something for the Straw Hats that they and we were not expecting. Like, for instance, hostages. And so guys, I believe that personally, as a possibility, you must accept this. It may not happen, Oda may conveniently ignore it, but theoretically, based on what the characters are established to doing and being like, this could happen. But why exactly am I speculating it here today? Let's talk again about Usopp and Sanji. As stated earlier, there are many similarities between Sanji and Robin and how they left the crew. There are also many similarities between Usopp and Sanji. But one thing that is not the same that everybody wants to point out to me is that JB, the Going Merry, could not be saved. Regardless of what Usopp thought could happen, he was being delusional, the ship was broken, there was no chance. Do you see the difference, JB? Zeph versus the Going Merry was doomed. But guys, full disclosure, I am not entirely sure that Owner Zeph is not doomed in the very same way. Just as Usopp could not fix the Going Merry, Sanji was never capable of saving Zeph. And they both just did not know that. And in a way, both were delusional, thinking that their way of saving the things that they cared about was ever going to work. Now remember guys, I do think that this is important, is remember that Sanji's objective of this whole situation with going to Whole Cake Island, we assume part of this is explicitly stated. The first part that we assume strongly is that he went to go save Owner Zeph, and then the second part of Sanji's plan was then to return back to the Straw Hats. If you guys recall from when he initially left, It seemed as though he was confident that he was going to succeed. Maybe in his mind he thought that he just had to attend the tea party, then Zeph wouldn't be killed, then he could return back to the Straw Hats. But he found out shortly that this was not possible, and he was essentially stuck. If he was going to save Zeph's life, then he could not return back to the Straw Hats. His plan, from the onset, was doomed to failure, just like Usopp. In order to return to the Straw Hat crew then, once Luffy had arrived to force him to, then essentially they had to attack Big Mom's own tea party, cancel the marriage, and then make Big Mom your enemy, thus putting Zeph back into danger. Although truthfully, and if you guys recall, this was initially the plan was to kill Big Mom, which, if it had been successful, would have actually saved Owner Zeph. But of course we know that they could not have killed Big Mom, that was never happening. So again guys, Sanji could not have both. He could not, 0% chance of both saving Owner Zeph and returning to the Straw Hats. Not unless Oda decides for Big Mom to forget things that she's threatened in the past. Usopp's plan, 0%. Sanji's plan, 0%. Just another possible layer of parallels. But let's take this a step further guys. We've talked recently about the general parallels from the pre and post time skip. How things are, in one way or another, repeating themselves with very significant differences. I'll go ahead and link that video in the description so that you can get a general idea of how it is that I approach this, the examples of the past, and various ways in which maybe we could speculate things that could happen in the future because of this. A lot of it for me is like interpreting the pre-time skip, applying it to the post-time skip as a kind of alternate universe, like for instance an alternate universe of Marineford, where Blackbeard decides it is time to fight Shanks. Shanks shows up and is not able to stop the war. Rather than Ivankov using her abilities to sacrifice Luffy's lifespan to allow him to fight, Trafalgar Law uses his abilities, sacrificing his own lifespan, killing himself, in order to allow Luffy to continue to fight. So if you guys understand the idea, here's a parallel for you. Owner Zeph is Ace. Both Ace and Owner Zeph to be executed because of their relationship to somebody else and not necessarily because of what they themselves have done. But to contrast, Ace represents the young generation, the up-and-comers, while Zeph is of the old guard. Almost a combination of both Ace and Whitebeard and the roles that they played in Marineford. Both Ace and Owner Zeph rejecting those who attempt to save them, accepting death in order to protect those that they love, and both failing. But will it be the same or will it be different? Oda likes to play with those ideas. Will Owner Zeph die, or will the Strats successfully save him, unlike Ace? But this is all speculative guys, and I just wanted to throw it out there as a possibility because I just like it as a story. But I just want to throw something out here to sort of add on to it that I just find to be really powerful, although I don't think that a lot of people would believe that it will happen. What if the All Blue was located in Wano, and Owner Zeph and Sanji got to see it before he died? I know a lot of people will say that Sanji will not find the All Blue until we get closer to Raftel and the end of the story, but I think that I have an argument which makes this possible. I'm not going to bother to justify this fully, so we are just going to tell this as though I am the narrator and this is the story. But I personally believe that the All Blue in the One Piece world will exist once the Red Line is destroyed. The Red Line divides the seas into quarters. Its very existence prevents the idea of the All Blue. However, I do not believe that the Red Line has always existed in the One Piece world. I believe that through some powers, some means, some technology, that it was created. And before it was created, the seas were joined. The entire ocean was the All Blue. So ultimately, I believe that Sanji's journey, Sanji's dreams and goals will all culminate in this moment in which it becomes important to destroy the Red Line. But this does not preclude the existence of an isolated sea that is just like the All Blue, as it once was however many years ago. If you guys recall back to Enies Lobby's hull, there's a giant hole in the ocean. This is interesting to me because we don't know why it exists, what created it, and where it leads to. And as far as I am aware and I have thought of, it is one of only two ways in order for Oda to be able to create the All Blue. This hole, which exists for some reason that we are not sure of, not only sucks water down to the depths it also sucks whatever kind of wildlife would come with it. Now imagine that this hole actually leads somewhere, and it is not alone. It is not the only hole in the ocean. You have one in each of the 4 distinct seas, all connected, leading to Wano, isolated from the world, the All Blue. And shortly after finding it, Sanji discovers the part 2 of his dreams, not only finding the All Blue, but bringing it to the rest of the world. But anyway guys, that is all I had to say today. As always, share your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.